Thank you very much, Program Director and Spokesperson for the Department of Home Affairs, my colleague, the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Njabulu Nzuza, the Home Affairs Acting Director General, Mr. Jackie McKay, who is with us here on the stand, and the Home Affairs Deputy Director General for Civic Services, Mr. Sigama, who's also with us here to help answer some of the technical questions if they may arise. Members of the media, fellow citizens, good morning and thank you for making time to engage with us as we outline services which are offered by the Department of Home Affairs under Alert Level 2 of the lockdown. These services resumed 2 days ago, that is on the 26th of August, after the directions authorizing the provision of these services was gazetted. Today we are here just to outline, for those who might not understand, and also to ask questions, to outline how it is going to be done. The Deputy Minister and myself work very closely with the officials in the department to constantly review the services that can resume safely in line with the disaster regulations and the health protocols in place. Let me start by saying we should remember at all times why we are here where we are as a country, and why certain services were stopped, and why we want to resume them. It might be very obvious to some people, but definitely people may forget. We are here where we are because we wanted to save lives, but now we are balancing it with livelihoods, because in Home Affairs, you know the crowds that come to our offices, because almost every South African at some stage in their life will need Home Affairs offices. So our offices are always overcrowded. And if social distancing is important in COVID-19, you will understand then why certain services could not be provided. But now we are painfully aware that as the economy opens, people having to go on with their lives, they cannot do so without the Department of Home Affairs, because even activities in the economy depend on what Home Affairs can provide. So we are here trying to strike a very delicate balance. So as a way of balancing the need to offer critical enabling documents to citizens, directions providing for the following additional services were issued, as I said, on Tuesday, the 25th August 2020. Ireke tsebaka se go tlhatholla ntwe ya botse hore batho ba tsebe hore re leka ka matla go boloka maphelo a batho ka hore ka mo kgorong ya rena ya Home Affairs go a tlalwa ka gore a gone motho mo nageng o e leng gore go tloga a belegwa go fitlhela a tlhokafala a ka se hwetse go le bohlokwa go ya Home Affairs. O swanetse go belegwa o nyaka certificate sa matswalo o tla Home Affairs. He o gola o tsena mahlalagading o nyaka pasa o tla Home Affairs. Ge o nyala o nyaka certificate sa lenyalo o tla Home Affairs. Ge o hlokafetse le gona go ne le wa swantse o tlang Home Affairs go tšea certificate sa gore a o tlogile mo lefatsheng le. So nako e ka moka mo bophelong wa gago o nyaka Home Affairs. Go bula business go nyakega ID o nyaka Home Affairs. Go etela dinaga tše dingwe go nyakega passport o nyaka Home Affairs. So gore bophelo bja gago bo sepele o nyaka o swanetse gore o etele kgoro ya Home Affairs. A ke hlatholle ke boletse gore go o nyala o nyaka Home Affairs. Batho ba managana gore ge ba hlala ba nyaka Home Affairs re ke be ga botseo nna re hladiše batho ra ba nyalantša ba hladiša ke kgoro ele ya justice. So go hlala o se ka tla mo rena nna re tla mo wena o ratana fela o nyaka o nyala. So re bontšha gore bophelo bja go ka moka kgoro e bohlokwa. Jwanong ka lebaka leo ge re tswaletše di tirelo ka baka la bolwetse wa COVID, re a tseba gore batho ba ya go ba mohlakong. Ke ka baka le re di bulang gannyane but re di bula ka mokgwa e leng gore ga re nyake gore batho ba rena ba no fetela ke bolwetse jo ka baka la merala di metelele le batho ba bantšintši ba batlang mo di-officing tša rena. Bjalong di-service tše re di buletšeng ke tše. Number 1, all temporary identity certificates issued during the period of the national state of disaster that have not yet expired on the date of commencement of these directions are hereby extended up to the 31st of October 2020. Le a tsewa re be re tswaletše taba ya dipasa re sa fe batho dipasa. Re be re ba fa ntho e bitswang gore ke TIC ke gore go ne pasa wa itimetša goba wa se e bone gore e mo kae. Re go fa ntho e ba reng ke temporary identity certificate or TIC ka baka la gore dipasa re be di-office tša rena di be di sa dumele go fa batho dipasa ka ge re be re tšhaba yona merala di emeteleleo re tšhaba yona bolwetse bja COVID. Bjalong re re wa swereng certificate seo ka gore se tšea kgwedi tše 3 bjalong re nagana gore tše ntšhi tša tsona di expirile wa se swereng a tsebe gore re a se extenda go fihla ka di 31 tša October 2020 se tla be se sa lokile. So anybody who has got a temporary identity document mustn't worry, we are extending it up to the 31st of October 2020. Number 2, applications for identity cards or green barcoded identity documents by persons who have been issued with a temporary identity certificate during the national state of disaster, which certificates have expired. Because let me explain it very well because it confused people. The one we are extending up to the 31st of October are certificates that have already expired. We are saying we are extending them up to the 31st of October. Which have not yet expired, sorry. The certificates that have not yet expired, we are extending them. But those who have expired already, we are inviting the people to come into the offices to come and fetch the ID. I'm sure I confused issues. But bao ba swereng lengwalo le la nakwana le le emetšeng pasa re le bitšang TIC ba e leng gore lengwalo leo la bona le sa le tirong a se la fella ke maatla gore ga la expire ba le sware ba tšwele pele ka lona go fihlela ka di 31 tša October ka 2020. Mara ba e leng gore ba swere lengwalo le mohuto ba expirile ba e mo di-officing tša rena ba e go tšea pasa gore re bulela bona fela go tšea pasa ka gore mangwalo a tshwanetšwe re be re ba file a expirile ene re bulela ka gore re tseba nomoro ya bona gore ke ba bakae re tseba nomoro ya mangwalo a expirileng ene re kgonne go bona gore ge re ba bolela ba bitša gore ba tle di-officing go ka se tle go tlalwa ka mokgwa wa go tshoša go swana le ge re buletše dipasa ka moka. So we know the numbers of the documents that have expired. And that's why we are calling them, because we know the offices won't be overwhelmed. Number 3, applications for first issue of identity card or green barcoded identity document. Now, those people who never had an ID before, whether e la e talana go ba ya card a sengkano ba le pasa ra ba dumella gore ba tle mo di-officing ka gore ba sa tswa matlhalagading ke baswa ka moka kore ke bana ba ka moka ba fihlela mengwage lesome le tselelang. All the youngsters who are turning 16 who have never had an ID in their life, we are opening for them to come and collect ID. You will appreciate that we are doing so because we also want to help matriculants. Many of them are going to write matric, they've turned 16 and the white ID. So all those are allowed to go to our offices to take the ID. Bana ba tswa matlhalagading ba fihlela mengwage lesome le metšo e selelago ba ile gore a sanka ba le pasa mo bophelong ba bona ra ba dumella gore ba tle di-officing tša rena ba tlo tšea pasa. Re tseba ga botse gore bana ba leng mphatong wa marematlou ba ba yang go ngwala moleko ba nyakega gore ba be le dipasa. So re ka se ba thibelele ka gore nyaka ba ngwala moleko le a tse gore bana ba boetse sekolong tone a thuto ba biditše gore ba boele dikolong ba tlo ngwala moleko. So re a gapeletša go ba fa dipasa ba ka ya di-officing ba go tšea dipasa tšeo. Applications for amendment of personal particulars. Batho ba ileng gore pasa tša bona di bontšha se seng se ba sa se nyakeng mo gongwe ba go phošagetše tšatši la matswalo go ba go phošaletše leina la bona go ba go phošagetše sefane ke gore ba ba nyakang go go change not go phoshagala ba ile gore ba nyaka go fetola ka bobona o ka no ba o nyaka go fetola leina ile gore a se phosho ya rena leina lo lengwadile mo o bo lengwadile la ga go mara o nyaka go le fetola o re botseleleng gore no leina le la ka le a e sa le lona ke nyaka le lengwe ke le ka gore a se re na mo Home Affairs re kgetha maina. Let me explain it very well. Amendment means people who want to change the particulars which they gave us. It's not us who have put those particulars in their ID. It's them who came to give us these particulars. Now they want to change them. That is called amendments. They are allowed to come into the office and make those amendments. Now the other category is people who want to apply for rectification. That means corrections on something that went wrong. Be it your date of birth. We usually meet many people who say, my date of birth in the ID is not reflected correctly, it's a mistake. I need to rectify it. Or who says the spelling of my surname is a mistake, or that we call rectification. So these are groups of people. Those who want to amend that which the information which they gave us, and they say they want to change it, that is an amendment. They are allowed to come. But those who say, no, Home Affairs, I didn't give you this information, you made a mistake here, this is not what I gave you, I want you to correct it, that's called rectification. They are also allowed to come in. In the period between 21st March 2020, 27th March 2020, I beg your pardon, and 21st August 2020, the department issued 347,787 temporary ID certificates. Gauteng accounted for most of these temporary identification certificates and has issued 92,597 in this period between the first day of the lockdown on the 27th of March and the 21st of August. Of the total issued temporary identification certificate, 65,129 have expired. They are no longer in use, they have expired. Now we are saying holders of these expired TRCs are now eligible to apply for smart IDs. Those are the ones I mentioned a few moments ago. They must come. We know there are 65,000, so we are expecting 65,129 people to go to our offices and apply for a smart ID card. Now, the validity of the remaining, in other words, then in the hands of citizens, we know that then there are 282,658 temporary identification certificates. Those are the ones who are extending up to the 31st of October because they've not yet expired. So we know our numbers, we know who's going to come and we know who is not going to come. On average, the department processes 1 million first-time applications a year, mostly from learners, for those who apply for IDs. The department has received a report from the Department of Basic Education indicating that there are 637,767 learners who do not have IDs. Bana bao ba sneng dipasa mara ba le sekolong ba yang go ngwala matric ke 637,767. Ra bala letša gore ba ka ya mo officing program eo deputy minister ke fetša mo o tle tla bolela ka yona gore ispediše bang gore ke program e re fileng yena gore a isepediše mo basweng a bone gore ba ba le dipasa pele ba ngwala matric. On average, 4,000 people a month visit our offices for amendments and rectification of personal particulars. So ke bolela ka ba le ba yang go fetola maina le difane le tšatši la matswalo go ya ka maitemogelo a rena go tla ba dikete tše nne kgwedi ka kgwedi. So when we open, we know that at least in a month there will be 4,000 people who come for rectification or amendment. South Africans who are abroad and need to return to South Africa can apply for emergency passports. Let me explain this. We received complaints, some of them even from members of parliament, about South Africans who are abroad whose passports have expired. And they were asking us to extend them like we are extending TICs or we are extending permits. You remember when the COVID-19 started, we said those people who are in South Africa by permits, we can extend them. Now there is an expectation that we can extend passports. Let me make it very clear. The rules that governs passports are not rules of the Department of Home Affairs, but they are rules of an organization called ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. ICAO is an international organization. They govern passports, and every country who is a member of ICAO have to follow those rules. According to those rules, a passport is never extended. You cannot extend a passport. If we do, say, as South Africa, put a stamp and say we are extending your passport, we'll do so. Let me tell you, you'll never enter any country. They'll turn you there or they'll even arrest you. They'll never agree. And the simple reason is that the International Civil Aviation Authority is trying to stop fraud, passport fraud, which is so prevalent among international syndicates. So once we issue a passport once, it's issued once, when it expires, it gets thrown away, we'll give you a new passport. That number cannot even be repeated. We cannot give you a passport that holds the number we used to hold before, like an ID. If you apply for an ID, you have got an ID number. If it gets lost, we issue it with a very similar number. We never do so with a passport. If you come to us and tell us your passport has expired, you get a new number. If you say your passport is lost, we block it, we give you a new number. So we cannot extend passport. Then what is the remedy? If you are stuck overseas and you want to come to South Africa, you are given a temporary one-way passport. Whether you are in New York, or you are in London, or you are in Paris, or you are in Lagos, or you are in Nairobi, or you are in Harare, or Lusaka, you want to come back home, they will give you a temporary passport. That is one way. In other words, it's just to allow you to get into that plane at that moment and arrive home and enter South Africa. From there, we'll see what to do. So I want this issue to be understood very clearly. We cannot, as some people have asked, extend a passport through a stamp or whoever. Passports are never extended. Passports, we never issue the same number again. That's exactly the rules of the International Civil Aviation Authority. The department, in partnership with the banks, which participate in the online system of smart ID card and passport applications, have opened for collections for clients who had applied for these documents before the lockdown. This service will only be provided on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays during the bank's operating hours. I think I need to explain this. During my budget speech last year, I announced that we have got an arrangement with the banks for people to apply for an ID or a passport online using their bank. You sit at home online, you apply, then the bank calls you to come and do biometrics in the bank, and from there they collect everything, they give it to Home Affairs, we do a background check, and we send it to government printers to print your passport and your ID. That is the job we've been having with the banks. Now, when the lockdown started, some of the banks closed this service and some people have already applied. Now we are saying certain banks have opened just for people to come and collect, not to start from the beginning, to come and collect the applications they already submitted before COVID-19. And those banks say they will open for that collection on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, only during working hours. So if you know yourself to have applied for an ID or a passport through the bank and it was never issued to you because of the closure and the lockdown, you can now go to that particular bank where you applied and collect it, but go on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. People who had applied for these documents before the 26th of March 2020, which is in the lockdown starting date, may collect their smart ID cards and or passports from their selected bank branches. Bank branches that will be reopening for collection of smart IDs and passports are the following. So, a se di banka ka moka tse di yang go bula go fa batho di pasa tseo le di ID tse ba se madi apply la se di banka ka moka. So it's not all the banks. I think it will be important to help people by reading the names of the banks that will be open and saving people on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday to collect their IDs. It is the Absa Green Acres in Port Elizabeth, Absa Sandton City, Absa Towers in Johannesburg, Absa Lifestyle Centurion, FNB Lifestyle Centurion, FNB Menlyn Pretoria, FNB Merchant Sandton, FNB Portside Cape Town, Investec Bank Sandton, Nedbank Arcadia, Nedbank Constantia Kloof in Roodepoort, Nedbank Rivonia, Nedbank Nelspruit, Nedbank St. George's Mall, Cape Town, Standard Bank Simon Street in Johannesburg, Standard Bank Canal Walk in Cape Town, Standard Bank Kilani Mall in Johannesburg, Standard Bank Centurion Lifestyle, Standard Bank Kingsmead in Durban, and Standard Bank Jubilee Mall in Hammanskraal. Those banks on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are prepared to be open, but during working hours to issue the IDs that you will have applied for before the lockdown. The e-Home Affairs portal remain deactivated as new applications are still not accepted in the current level of the lockdown. There are some media houses who ask us about e-Home Affairs portal. The e-Home Affairs portal is where people apply at home online and then make an appointment to come to the Department of Home Affairs and do their biometrics. This is the very same job that was done with the banks. We will never be able to offer it in ordinary Home Affairs offices because our people don't understand the system of making appointments. They all come at the same time. They don't follow appointments. So in the banks, they were able to follow these appointments. That's why they were doing the e-Home Affairs. Now, that system remained closed. The people who are going there to collect IDs are those who applied for those IDs before the system was closed. So it remained closed. You cannot go and start applying from the beginning. The refugee reception offices and the borders throughout the country remain closed. We are not opening any border. We're not opening any refugee reception office. The VFS offices are open only by appointment for collection of outcomes on applications which were made before the lockdown. People remember that VFS is the visa facilitation services. They are aware that that has been closed. Now we are saying it will only be open by appointment for collection of outcomes on applications which were made before the lockdown. During each lockdown level, we analyze the numbers of people who normally visit our offices and determine which services we can offer safely. At all times, we aim to protect the lives of our employees and citizens while ensuring access to essential services. In reality, the pandemic is still with us, and we want to keep the numbers of people who could be exposed to the virus in our offices to a bare minimum. That's why we are doing things in the way I've just announced. Even when the world paused during the level 5 of the lockdown, Home Affairs didn't. We couldn't. Our people needed our services to adjust to a new normal. We kept going within the limitations caused by COVID-19 regulations. Since the beginning of the lockdown until the 25th of August, our committed and dedicated staff assisted more than 1.6 million people who visited our offices with crucial enabling documents. So it means even during the lockdown, when we have markedly reduced the services we could offer, still 1.6 million people visited our Home Affairs offices. And we assisted them with the following services. We issued, or rather we reissued. That means people who wanted replacement birth certificate, we reissued 181,492. Not new birth certificate, but for those who wanted replacements because something happened with their birth certificate. We issued 198,846 death registrations during that period. We issued 347,787 temporary ID certificates, as I've already indicated earlier. We registered 366,988 births. That means people who were born and taking a birth certificate for the first time were 366,988 during this period. We also issued 318,812 IDs and 195,474 passports, mostly for people involved with essential services. Somebody may ask and said, no, but Minister, you said passports application is closed, is still closed now. So how did you issue 195,474? You'll remember that there are people who were allowed to cross the borders. Those who were transporting cargo across our borders, we have never closed that. The truck drivers, many of them came to take passports from us. People who are involved in essential services like health services, they were also allowed to go through our borders. People who were manning certain essential economic sectors. So for those, we've issued 195,474 passports. From the beginning of the lockdown on 27 March 2020 until Wednesday, 26 August 2020, our immigration officials assisted 839,004 people to cross our borders under the permissible conditions. You'll remember that even though our borders were closed, there were people who were applying because of certain conditions that forced them to cross the borders. I've already mentioned them. For instance, the truck drivers, the people who are coming for health services. We are now opening for students in neighboring countries who study in South Africa. But since the 27th of March to the 26th of August, 839,004 people crossed our borders and they were assisted by our officials under permissible conditions that were permissible under the lockdown. Most of these people were foreign nationals who were returning to their countries and South Africans who were returning home. We could not stop people from going home and we could not stop South Africans from coming back here. So certain groups have to be allowed. Some of these South Africans have since returned to their base countries. Other people who were assisted include those who were traveling for emergency medical evacuations. I've already said that. As we resume more services, I urge everyone who will be visiting our offices and our partner banks to observe health protocols, please, aimed at combating the spread of COVID-19. They must wear face masks, maintain social distancing, and adhere to all other applicable regulations. The banks had undertaken to continue doing all in their powers to protect their staff and clients. It's very important, fellow South Africans, for us to protect the public and our clients. Because if we don't do so, it can be counterproductive. Quite a number of Home Affairs offices which were open had to close when somebody tests positive in there, and there won't be any services. We had to close them, send everybody home, sanitize them, test them. So when a person in a Home Affairs tests positive, it is not in the interest of citizens. That's why we are urging them. to wear masks and not get angry when they turn you away from a Home Affairs office and say you don't have a mask, because we don't allow anybody to enter our office without a mask. We also insist on social distancing, and we want people to use sanitizers. So we are doing it for the smooth running of our offices and to protect you, because if we don't, we might end up closing that office because somebody tested positive, and people in that area suffer. I know quite a number of offices had to be closed in the Eastern Cape, and we had lots and lots of complaints from the public, even the Premier of the Eastern Cape complaining because people found offices closed. And so if people don't cooperate, offices will be closed because somebody tested positive, and we'll send them home. So re khopela batho ba rena gore please ba kwishishe gore re leka go dirang. Ge re ba ganetša go tsena ka ofising ya Home Affairs ka baka la gore ga ba rwala mask, goba ga ba maintain social distancing ya go se batamelane, goba ba gana di-sanitizers re ba gomiša, re thuša bona ka gore ge re ka se dire ka mokgo o mongwe ka mogare ga office ya Home Affairs a testa positive for COVID, office eo re a e tswalela, re o fetša matšatši a mane or even beke re e kwaletše re sanitizer, batho ba tlo safara mo felong la boito. So ge le senyako o safara berekane le rena gore re kgone go tšwela pele, re kgone go lefa ditirelo. Thank you very much. Ke a leboga. I think the Deputy Minister will come and deliver his services. Thank you.